good evening, good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today. Thank you for coming to our webinar. Okay, so my name is Ava Villeda Osmond, and I am part of a team that brings you the product ListenWise. And for attendees of today's webinar, I especially want you to know about our sister product, LingoLift. LingoLift is what you see we're talking about here. It builds the foundational social and academic language that newcomers need. So if we have any newcomer teachers in the audience, this is something I definitely want you to know about. We have a large collection of short educational videos that teach content and language together. Our unique Watch, Learn, Speak instructional sequence and teacher's guides offer a powerful yet flexible tool for building newcomer skills as quickly as possible. And you can find out more information about that on our website, listenwise.com, or you can also go to lingolift.com. And I'm going to be sharing more about our main product, ListenWise, at the end of today's webinar. And now that I'm done with my introduction, I am pleased to pass the baton to our speakers who will be introducing themselves. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and don't forget to continue the chat and also send in your questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ava.
Thank you, Ava.
So if it's okay, I'd like to introduce my shiro, Dr. Carrie Orange-Jones. She is an assistant principal at West Orange Public Schools in New Jersey. She is my co-author and somebody that I am just so happy to kind of journey along through life with. She is an educational consultant for Intellectually Yours. She does presentations, and she is an adjunct professor at two of the amazing colleges near us. So please welcome Dr. Orange-Jones.
And it is my honor to introduce my shiro, my sister, Dr. Denise Furlong. She's an assistant professor at Georgian Court University. She definitely has a passion for mentoring novice educators, but her big passion is what we are, the reason why we're here, multilingual learners. And she authored, besides our new book, Learners First, Purpose and Practicality in Your Early Years of Teaching, Denise is also the author of Voices of Newcomers, Experiences of Multilingual Learners. She is also a presenter and a coach and has been traveling like all over as a consultant with her company, Furlong Educational Consulting, LLC. She got to go to Bali this summer. So I'm trying to be like Denise when I grow up and do some of this important work that is global work. And it's a pleasure to introduce my sister.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll start with a quick little word cloud. So what are your primary motivators? I'm sure everybody has used poll everywhere, but what are your primary motivators for engaging in this crucial ML work? So you can scan the QR code with your camera app, or you could just go to pollev.com, Dr. K Orange Jones 937, and let's do this quick poll. And
so while you're engaging in that, let's talk about like, what is this crucial work? So we're thinking about what motivates us, what kind of like brought us here. You know, we have people from South Africa here. We have people from Asia here. We have really like an incredible crowd. So what is this crucial work? So Carrie and I, between the two of us, we have over 50 years of education experience, and we both work in areas in which we have many multilingual learners. So what is it that you're bringing? Carrie, are you able to go to, I'm seeing some responses.
Yep, I'm getting ready to go and look at the responses now.
Yes.
I just want to give some time. So we have, what are your primary motivators for engaging in this crucial work? Teaching, students, language, culture, engagement, sharing, progress. One that stands out for me, democracy, diversity, Another word that's standing out for me is erasure, equity. But you know what's really, really the big thing here is that students is in the middle, like right in the middle. Like I have a clear shot. I'm not sure if everybody else can see what I can see, but right in the middle, the biggest word that you see is students. And then everything falls around it. Advocacy, empowering, differentiate, all these things, all these words. I see. It is voices, engaged, all these things center around that one big word that stands out for everybody, and as students. That says a lot. That says a lot. So, shared values. We believe the best in people. We believe the best in our students. We believe the best in our students' families, our colleagues, our co-teachers. We try to believe the best in administration.
That's coming from an administrator.
I'm an administrator. I'm a realist. We try to believe the best, and it needs to be more of a connection between administrators and teachers and families. There needs to be some cohesion. Decision makers, which tends to be the BOE, community members, and all stakeholders, and ourselves. We have to believe the best, and we want to believe the best in our MLs. I would rather be wrong in believing the best in something than be wrong in believing the worst. Denise put that quote there. It's very powerful. Denise, if you want to expand on it a little bit.
Well, I think Carrie
motivated you
and I
to
both
put that
have
quote?
some nice backgrounds, in various grades, although the middle grades are, I think, where we spent most of our careers. And if I'm believing the best in someone and I'm a fool, I'm okay with that. Rather than being wrong and believing the worst, and someone really does have genuine, intentions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We can go on to the next slide.
Okay, so when we're talking about colos or colocos, we're talking about different types of objectives and kind of keeping ourselves honest. We always think about that. And, while I'm teaching graduate school and while we're, planning our presentations in different sessions that we're doing. So the content and the language objectives are pretty clear. I do just want to talk about the culture objectives. And that's something that we don't always talk about, but it's really the why. Why is this an important thing for us to talk about? And we're going to be thinking about the importance of access and engagement for multilingual learners in different content areas. So we're talking about MLs, we're talking about multilingual learners, and across the country, we are having this shift towards more like asset-based language. And rather than assuming that they just are learning English, they are learning among all of their languages. So they are newcomers potentially. They could be LTELs or experienced multilinguals, or different or like a different way of saying, like, these are students who have been in program for quite some time. They possibly could come to us with limited or interrupted formal education, or with educational differences. That would be MEDs, multilinguals with educational differences. Sometimes students come to us as unaccompanied minors, and I have a number of them. Or they could be twice or thrice exceptional learners. They could be eligible for language services, or possibly they might have some other challenges in learning or medical issues. Probably more importantly, I'm going to say definitely more importantly, they are family members. They're community members. They possibly belong to organizations, with religion. They are cultural stakeholders. They are all of these things. And potentially, if you talk to them and their families, that's going to be what truly defines them, not something having to do with a measure of language or a measure of education that it is perceived that they have. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, go ahead, Carrie.
Denise, before you move on, there was in the chat, someone said that the language is not something that they're used to. I believe the experienced multilinguals and students with limited interrupted formal education. Could you expand on it just a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for that. I missed that. So
Problem.
there are, so when we have students who enter our programs in whatever country that we're talking about, sometimes people are waiting for them to exit. So, in order to exit our language programs, or it could be English as an additional language, English as a second language, they have to pass a certain point of proficiency in English. If you're saying experience multilinguals, it is a more asset based way of saying it's a student who has not achieved that proficiency in English for several years. Um, SLIFE would be some, like, it's a term in the United States that is used for students who perhaps have come to us with some gaps in their formal education. To be clear, our students, no matter what their formal education could be, have been learning their entire lives. So there is often a deficit view of students who fall under like this term or this category SLIFE. But in my experience, and I'm sure Carrie would say the same, any and all of these students who have come to us just have such valuable life experiences, and they've been learning for years. So we are actually going to go over this like these terms a little bit more during the presentation.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you. Up the other way.
Yep.
There we go.
So, who are the educators?
Mm-hmm.
The educators, I mean, and that could be anyone. When you think about educators, it's not just the traditional people in the classroom. Of course, you have your ML and EL teachers, which is how I met Denise. That's what she was doing when we first met. Content and classroom teachers. So for me, when I was in the classroom, that's who I was. I was a science teacher and a social studies teacher. And I had students who would come to me who were MLs and trying to teach them, I had to come up with a skill set to help, get them the language that they needed so they could be successful. They're the paraprofessionals who are in the classroom with you, delivering and assisting with delivering instruction. Related service professionals like your OT/PT people, guidance counselors, your child study team, any staff from the lunch ladies to the ladies in the kitchen, administration, the Board of Education representatives, parents, family, immediate, extended and immediate family, close friends, the community at large, religious or group leaders, health advocates, all the stakeholders. Because at the end of the day, in your community, everyone is a stakeholder. When you have our students, you want to do the best that you can with them so that they can be very positive contributors to society. So who are the educators? All these people, but also themselves. They do educate themselves. They ingratiate themselves into the culture that they're introduced to in school, and they learn how to access language to the best of their ability.
And they educate us too.
Denise?
Okay, so how do we reframe? I'm going to be completely kind of vulnerable with you right now and candid. I have heard teachers say this directly to me. Maybe I'll be blessed next semester and I will not have these students in my class.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing English is a disability in history class.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's my son's name. I'm not going to call you that. I'm going to call you something else. So what we need to do is we need to reframe. We need to reframe. Maybe I'll be blessed next semester and I will have multilingual learners. Maybe, not knowing English, but knowing a lot of other things is really something that could contribute to our history class. And that's my son's name. Well, you know what? We learn names and we respect identities and we respect cultures. We reframe.
I was just asking some stuff in the chat with Mary saying that all students deserve dignity, and I totally agree. So what single words best capture the positive impact and contributions of our MLs within our schools' communities? Like when you think of MLs, because of course everyone has some kind of positivity. I'm all about asset-based speech. What are the words that best capture the positive impact and contributions of our MLs within our school communities? So I'll give you a second. I see the numbers like going up. Okay.
I'm
So let's
excited
take a
about
look
this one.
at I know. So experience, traditions, collaboration, resilience. Resilience is one of my favorite words. We did like a little project at school. We all had to pick a word that described yourself or whatever, and mine was resilience.
And then some.
Enriching, perseverance, empowerment. Like this is Hispanic Heritage Month, and to see some of the things going on in the district, and I hope that these activities are going on in other districts as well. um, you know, Hispanic culture is so rich, and it gives the students like to have their culture be shared some pride and make them feel like that they belong, and I think that's so important. I wish I was doing this because I would put belonging there. In the chat we see vibrant culture, we see integrity, we see richness, all of these things.
Heroes. Okay, so if we, we're just talking like educators here, like, oh, the biggest challenge that my MLs face would be, making sure that they are keeping up in social studies class, or the fact that academics is challenging for them when they are still like working on their English proficiency. However, when you speak to our students, that might be a different answer. So, what could be important for educators to remember when they're thinking about what their students' perspectives are? I found in speaking with students, and I wonder if your experiences are the same, that maybe the biggest challenge was finding friends, or their biggest challenge was, navigating the responsibilities that they have at home against the responsibilities they have as a student. Or a challenge could be like that their parents don't speak English, so they really have to navigate doctor's appointments with them, or they have to speak with other community services on their parents' behalf. So just something to think about. And we think about within the content areas, another challenge might be that they don't have the background knowledge, and Carrie is going to be talking a lot about this. But if you're thinking, the background knowledge that sometimes teachers assume that they might have, because it's something that might be typical that a student who grew up in the United States might know, something to consider. We can go to the next slide. And that's what we can assume. So I broke it up into 3 different types of schema just for today's webinar. Thinking about like the literacy, language, and academic skills. Well, how many languages do they know? And have they had any exposure to English or the language of instruction in any other formats? What is their previous education similar to what we offer? Are they culturally adapted to the norms of our educational system? What is the focus of education that they had, and are there similarities between their languages and English? Knowledge of the world. What was their perspective of education? What was their perspective even of the United States? SES, socioeconomic status. What types of effects or impacts might that have on them? And as I'm sure you've learned before, but you know what? Maybe they haven't. We can go to the next.
Thank you. So this is my bag. I love doing this, and then I'll have some examples for you later. But now we're talking about engaging MLs in literacy and language. One of the ways that I did it, because I'll be honest with you, I was not a pro at this. I'm a person who didn't go to traditional school. I have a degree in criminal justice. I went alternate route. So one year I had a student who came to me, didn't speak any English at all. And my Spanish is Spanglish at best. Like I can go to Mexico and I can eat and travel and stuff, but beyond that, you got me. And what I noticed is two things, and we'll talk about math later. Math is universal. It's like it's right or wrong. 2 times 2 is always going to be 4, and 3 plus 1 is always going to be 4. So that was easy for them to navigate. But in trying to get students to access language, I did a lot of interpretation for them, but I found that graphic novels was the thing that multilingual learners gravitated towards, because you have pictures, and using pictures to tell a story was very important. Using graphic novels supports comprehension through visuals. Like you can look at pictures, and the pictures, like the storyboards, actually tell a story. Or even if they can't read the language, they're creating a story, and you can guide them in the right direction, giving them context clues, and they can infer plot. They can look and infer character motions. They can tell if somebody's happy or sad, even if their language is limited. It builds academic and social vocabulary, dialogue and speech bubbles. It shows what authentic conversation looks like, that give and take, like this person speaking and then that person is speaking, and it supports their everyday language. Facilitates discussion and critical thinking. Images shared, they reference point. They make classroom talk more inclusive. They don't feel left out. They can discuss themes and perspectives. And, I used to do a couple of different kind of have them create their stories, maybe in a graphic novel, and I'm going to show you some examples. Some of them had to do it in Spanish. Unfortunately, I don't have any examples of Spanish ones, but still it told a story. And if they were able to match pictures to language, then I could sit and help them decode and figure out how to take those pictures and their language and turn it into English. That was really, really great for them. And I had a teacher push in with me who spoke Spanish, so that helped a great deal. And it strengthens multimodal literacy, gives them how to connect text. They get to look at visuals, they get to understand symbols, and all these things are aligned with the 21st century learning standards. And unfortunately, I don't want to go into my whole anti-testing spiel, but some of these things help prepare them for the tests that they have to take, regardless of the fact that they're new here. But it did give them a basis to build on. And then I will show you some examples later on in the presentation. Denise.
Okay, so we have, so in New Jersey, we use the WIDA standards and WIDA levels. So when I'm talking about students who have like level 1 and 2 proficiency, that would be like our newcomers and maybe our students who are at the beginning part of their English language proficiency. Students at levels 3 and 4, they might have a bit more English that we could build on. So when we're thinking about translanguaging, which is one of like my favorite things in the world, which we will talk about, translating and target language. So things to think about. So there's lots of variables. We have students in New Jersey. I recently taught at my old high school. And when I was teaching multilingual learners, I had in that school alone 9 languages, which near us, that's kind of nothing. There are some districts that have, Carrie, I wonder what yours is, but, that have 40 something, 50 something different languages represented. So yeah. So do our students have literacy in other languages? Well, possibly we could build on that. If they don't have it, we're going to build on whatever it is that they've got. So we're thinking about like, are their languages similar to English or not? And that SEMH is social, emotional, mental health. And that's something that we always need to keep at the forefront of our minds.
Yes.
So translanguaging. So this would be where your students and all humans kind of just use all the languages that are just inside of their mind and soul when they are communicating, whether it's in writing, whether it is academic speech, whether it is just like very casual speech with their peers. So that translanguaging would be that like seamless going back and forth, that seamless weaving of different languages. Sometimes it could be among 2 languages, sometimes it could be among 5 languages. And it's something that it's really important for us to engage our students in and to really encourage them to do. So we can go to the next slide, and this kind of is a continuation. So if I'm going to translate, sometimes it's a good idea and sometimes it's not. And that's kind of the issue, is that like it's such a gray area that nobody could say never translate and nobody could say always translate. Well, if I'm going to translate something for my students, would it make sense to them? Do they have that grade level literacy and vocabulary in any other language? Or am I translating to something that they wouldn't know anyway? And Carrie's heard this before. Like I use the example of 10th grade biology. So if I have a student that comes to me and I'm giving them some important 10th grade biology, but they never learned these terms anywhere else in any other languages, that translation is going to mean nothing. So building the schema, the vocabulary, and the background knowledge, using videos, audios, different, types of visuals, maybe front loading the vocabulary where I'm going to choose key vocabulary, introduce it first, have them like engage with it first, really understand the vocabulary, and then go into the content area. That would be something that would be probably preferable than if I just went in and translated everything, because that might not make sense anyway. So you can go to the next slide. And again, it's a continuation. So what I would do is, I really don't want to say simplify because that sounds pretty kind of condescending. So I would clarify or summarize information in English, taking out like whatever they don't need. Then if students wanted to kind of translate that, that's fine. I even could have it in an outline form if I wanted to, just with simple phrases or keywords. When students are writing, they could write in any of their languages using translanguaging practices. Then I would have them, hopefully I will have front loaded some key vocabulary first. I would like for them to use those in English. So even if they're writing in French, if they're writing in any other language, and then put those words in English and then come back. Then what I would have them do is, write in whatever languages they're going to write in, go back and then kind of decide for themselves what other words that perhaps they should translate alongside so I could understand what they said. Do I need to know every single word that they write to know if they're in the ballpark and if they're understanding the concept? No. Just kind of a much better way than just throwing a whole essay in Google Translate and calling it a day. You're really like you are taking ownership of your languages that way. You can go to the next slide.
Some good stuff going on in the chat. Liz is saying if educators want to translate anything, make the directions to the assignment, which is true. Specific verbs or words that can be figured out via context, but side by side with the English text. That's a great idea. And Cleotilde, I hope I said your name correctly. I like to use videos too. I'm big on videos when I was in the classroom, and music. I use a lot of music. All right, so consider a time in which you took a risk and did not know if you're going to be successful in the classroom. This is, with our MLs. What were your feelings, and did you have support? And what would happen if you failed? I don't like to use the word fail but that's the language that we're given. But talk to us about it. Drop something in the chat. Let's see what we get. I mean, it's like a lull because everybody's probably just going to town. So, Liz, I let my kids use their language and then translate with the help of the computers. Okay. Sometimes it was like a huge debate here about letting students use their native language in the classroom. It's like this battle between full immersion versus using your native language. Um, I don't know if we've ever really discussed that, Denise. I gotta get your thoughts on that.
Oh,
Apprehensive.
I can go hard at that.
Uh,
So, I think like having the feelings of the teacher, um, that sometimes that they don't want things going on in the classroom that they don't understand. And
right.
like I said, we've been middle school teachers for quite some time, and I'm pretty suspicious of a lot of what my students do. But that is where you have to kind of just have faith. So for me to say English only is a really difficult way in saying that I don't value my students' identity or like their languages or their cultures. I think it's finding that fine line between, okay, someone's saying something to me. Okay, I really appreciate what you just said. Would you try to say some of that in English so we can kind of like, move the needle a little bit, on their proficiency? But I really do appreciate to have like a multilingual classroom, even if I don't speak all of the languages of my students. And hey,
Wow.
isn't that me feeling like I'm taking a risk as a teacher? And why don't I take a risk and, try to learn some of the keywords in the languages of my students too? And what happens if I fail? Well, I can laugh at myself, and that's
Hmm.
okay. And that's like modeling as well.
There's one thing that I want to point out before we move on.
Mhm.
Tracy, there's a lot of good stuff in the chat, but I like this idea of using response journals that Tracy Bunting stated.
Oh,
Using
yeah.
response journals with students who were brand new to the country. They started with pictures, and 6 weeks later, they were using words, sentences, and even multiple sentences. And I responded to their journal entries as always, and always asked a question, and they responded using translanguaging skills and my responses to them as models. I love it.
I love it. And
Thank.
Tracy, it sounds like Tracy's like going back and responding. We do have to make sure if we have students writing anything, such as in the journal, thinking of SEMH, social emotional mental health, we do have to make sure that if we have students writing, that you are looking at it because they might be giving us calls for help. And I experienced that while teaching high school, and I said, oh my gosh, thank goodness I looked at this. Not that you have to look at them every day, but you have to be upfront with the students and say, I try to look at 5 or 6 a day while I'm having my sandwich at lunch, and I don't get to everyone's every day, but I try to get to everyone's every week. So just important. um
Okay.
Okay. So going beyond translating, and what might this look like in different content areas? Well, we've been talking about this. We're talking about front loading the vocabulary. We're talking about the visuals and the videos and the graphic novels and the ways that like we encourage our students to write. We don't jump all over them for errors. We think about communicative competence, and we talk
Mm.
about like understanding rather than correcting all the time. Because you know what, I if I feel that someone, if I'm a language learner and I feel like someone's going to jump all over me every time I make a mistake, I'm going to be quiet. And
Right,
oh, you
right.
need to make sure that their peers say nothing either, you know because they'll be all over the, especially like those fourth, fifth graders, they will be correcting people all day. So that's part of the taking
Right.
risks. Yep.
So, engage in MLs in literacy and language. So this was me. This was my thing.
Mhm.
Using graphic novels. So we use this book in ELA, El Defa, which the kids loved, and the pictures. And we had some MLs who actually acted out some of the pieces, which was great. Like the ELA teacher and I used to work together. I taught science and social studies, and I would push in with the math teacher, and I would also push in with the ELA teacher. And so we got to the point where the kids got so comfortable, our MLs that we had that year, that they would act out some of the action in the story. I also have some examples. I'm going to share my screen. This was Willie's. Like this was one thing that he did with Matt. And so he had and Willie loved graphic novels. I have a whole bunch of stuff on him. So then he talked about learning about operations and decimals and fractions. He did a whole thing with one of my teachers here. So this was one project that he did. And I'm going to share this tab instead. And then, so this was supposed to be his way of trying to get people to use solar panels. So, hey, today I will be talking to you about the benefits of solar panels. Now, this, at this point, he was advanced ML, but for Willie, this was really great because we had a hard time trying to get Willie to produce text and work and things of that nature. But he gravitated towards using graphic novels, and this really helped Willie become really adept or more adept at using language and trying to write stories and explain things using pictures to help him.
Okay, so when we talk about comprehensible input, there's been some talk recently saying that comprehensible input is somewhat of a condescending term, but it comes from what we study from Stephen Krashen with his hypotheses of language acquisition. So what it is, it's a very specific way that I kind of call it teacher talk. So it's a way that I make sure that I'm scaffolding my language to make it more comprehensible, keeping in mind the proficiency levels of my students. So that's where we're using the same objectives, but different ways for our students to achieve it. And then, that's where you're front loading the vocabulary. You're thinking about 4 domains of language: the listening, speaking, and reading and writing. And then with the output, you are then like doing that summary. You're creating a visual. Some of your students are going to answer at the word level, then maybe expanding to a phrase or a sentence, and then, to discourse or a paragraph. So thinking about the different ways that you could provide access for your students to engage in language output at whatever level of proficiency that they have, you're really kind of like empowering them to use language, even though they might need different supports.
So again, and this is going back to some of the things that I use with the graphic novel, but also in class as a social studies and science teacher, some of the things that I used to do with my students, with my MLs, using labels and diagrams and models. I taught science one year where I had 17 students in my period 7, and of the 17, 10 of them were MLs. How did I engage them? I was really big on using notebooks and doing a lot of diagramming and hand-on work for them and connecting what we were doing to the vocabulary. Let students do the lab activity first. And that was another good thing. Like, I would have them work backwards. We would also talk about, like, if I take this and I mix it with this, what do you think is going to happen? Having some hypotheses. And I would allow them to sketch note. And then I know I said in the chat earlier that I was going to drop on the Padlet the TED Talk about using graphic novels. There was also another activity that I found. There's another webpage about sketchnoting. So we sketchnote in ELA. I picked that up from my ELA colleagues. So we also used to sketchnote in science. And there's a webpage that can describe how to use sketchnoting in science class for your ML specifically. Offer sentence frames, I observe, because to support academic talk that help them. And again, all this leads up to our interactive science journals with bilingual notes and drawings alongside English writing. Social studies was pretty similar. Primary sources with scaffolds, captionings, loving timelines. They love videos of original speeches, role playing and simulation. Some of the best fun I ever had in social studies classes was role playing. We did Jamestown one year, and they decided to talk about the hunger period, and everybody was starving and dying. But it was cute because they were fully immersed in trying to learn about Jamestown so they could role play this out. Tackling the students' background knowledge, which was really important because when you look at history is it's like cohesive everywhere. We all have similar histories, regardless of where you lived on the world, on this globe. everybody's had some type of revolution, or people being disenfranchised, fighting for their rights or their freedoms. So that was also great in social studies class, and using graphic organizers, which it connects with like interactive science journal. Anytime they can use anything with details and writings and drawings, that helps with the language acquisition. Hi, do you want to learn about photosynthesis? And then he explained, he used, like the arrows and the pictures, that the plants need carbon dioxide. He labeled it. The plant needs water, light energy. And this was Daniel. This is a student who was an ML. And then we also had Sailor for Hire. This was done in social studies, and this was a unit that we did on exploration of the globe. What would you like? And he wrote a little story about getting his crew together, what he was looking for, so they could go expand. And what were they looking for? When they're exploring, they're looking for new trade routes to Asia. They were looking for spices, gold, and finding new land. And he used, if you look at the pictures that he selected, he used backgrounds to show me that he understood the content. To me, like, that's so amazing every time I look at it. And Daniel was one who, on top of everything else, was a little ADHD. So this was stuff that he was fully immersed, and it helped him so much. And it also helped me understand that he knew what I was teaching. He understood the content, and this is how he chose to show me. This is great. And if you want to know what I'm using, that's Pixton. It's the best $100 a year I've ever spent in the classroom. Denise.
Okay, so roles of technology. Again, we don't want to just kind of throw our students on technology and just assume that that's going to be their teacher. And I know that sounds kind of rough around the edges, but we want to make sure that, yes, we use technology as appropriate or as relevant or as needed, but making sure that they have like that teacher support. And also understanding that not all of our students, if they're newcomers, if they come to us, they might not be familiar with technology. They might not be familiar with the class forums that we use, like Google Classroom or Schoology, and they might need a lot of support in that way. You can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know that we're kind of like running short on time now, but this is something that we've been talking about, like where you could do that front loading of vocabulary before you read a story, before you engage in a unit, before you talk about like a passage, before you do an experiment, before you do reader's theater, before you do anything like across the content areas. Choose a couple of words, write it on the board, engage with them, give it to them on an anchor chart or with a reference sheet, using word banks and engaging. If there are cognates between English and, heritage languages, definitely use them. Those are words that are similar between languages. You can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just an example. Going back to the science, maybe this could be like a passage that, if we're talking about ocean vocabulary. So I might do like a screencast, like a very short, under 5 minutes, because that's the account that I have that's free. And I would do like a quick video where I would share my screen and I would talk about it. I would do some of the front loading of vocabulary because, frankly, if you see the word ocean, it doesn't look like that's how that's pronounced. So kind of going through like the different tiers of vocabulary, the tier 1 might be the most basic words that possibly students might know, possibly not if you have newcomers. Tier 2 would be the vocabulary that helps them understand this, passage specifically. Then they can kind of like either get a highlighter, if they're doing it with pen and paper, and highlight their known vocabulary, highlight words that, that they want to know, like words that are cognates, and then do follow-up activities with it. So ways to provide accessibility. And we can go to the next slide. Okay. Carrie is going to show you just quickly, because I know we have some math teachers with us today. So my most recent position was giving multilingual support in algebra and in biology. So what I have here, and at the time I had my newcomers spoke either Spanish or French at the time. I had many other languages represented in the program, but this is what I set up. So I set up something where I had like cognates or, similar words. So then kind of giving them the heads up that this is something that you could leverage your own language and your own literacy in order to understand what you're doing. Even like later on, absolute value, where I was talking about like this, using numbers as the example, the addition, like kind of going over those signs and providing the vocabulary, but different ways. And I did a lot with screencasts with that as well. Like I would use illustrations, or even, we had the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally and things like that, the parentheses or PEMDAS and things like that, where it would be those mnemonic devices that I would specifically explain to students. This is what parentheses are. This is, the order of operations. So we talk about how it is a bit of a challenge sometimes with math. And like Carrie said before, yes, some of math is absolute, like the 3 + 1 is always 4. But sometimes, like kind of helping them engage with those concepts, especially as you get to that higher level math, absolutely a little bit challenging. So your newcomers, you might really just be working with the numbers at that point. Just the equations, watching the number formations, because sometimes like a 1 could look like a 7 and things like that. And as proficiency increases, then you really do, kind of like help them move towards like the word problems using anchor charts and kind of like, I have at the bottom here, provide fewer supports as proficiency increases. So we can go to the next slide. And this is like one of those videos that we don't have to talk about, but cognitive exhaustion is something that's real, and it's difficult to identify because sometimes our students might be putting their heads on their desks, or they might be kind of disengaging, and we think that it might be behaviors that aren't necessarily respectful or that might be defiant. And it's really challenging, particularly in the content areas, because then we are trying to foster those connections between prior knowledge and, kind of establishing new content and new skills. So it's not only with our newcomers, it could be any of our multilingual learners. And that's really important for us to know, is that it is exhausting working in more than one language all day. Some of our students, they might have a native language or a heritage language. They might have gone to school learning in a different language, and they might be coming to us trying to engage in yet another language, and it's exhausting. So it's really important that we understand that, appreciate it, and support it. We can go to the next slide. You want to do that one, Claire? Oh, you know what? I'll do this one. Feelings of belonging. So we have to make sure that our students are not marginalized to the side of the room. That they are not, that we don't assume that they're going to be friends with certain populations because maybe they share a language. We have to make sure that everything we do, both in the classroom and in the school, indicates that they are valued, and that we really we appreciate their representation. We have to make sure that they have leadership opportunities. They need to be on school student council. They need to be those peer leaders. They need to have access to information to kind of help them in their future. We go to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am. So in doing all this, we talk about asset-based perspectives. This is something that we've been discussing on and off throughout the whole presentation. I'm really big on asset-based perspectives. Coming out of COVID, when everyone started talking about learning loss, I really got deeply involved in what do you mean by learning loss and why do we always use deficit speech? There's a lot of times you see this when we deal with MLs, or students like who might be have IEPs or 504s, but specifically you do see a lot of this MLs. Here's some ways to instead of talking in the red, the deficit speech, let's talk about it in a positive asset-based perspective. Like this student knows no English, this student speaks other languages. Or how is this student going to do the grade level work, which is one of my favorites? How are we going to give access to grade level work to this student? We must immerse him in English even in the hallways. We must celebrate and leverage all languages. MLs are a lot of work to teach. MLs are a lot of opportunities to teach. And I mean, as an educator, it goes all the ways. Like, teaching is hard work and hard work, but it's worth it in the end. And so I choose to look at it in an asset-based lens as opposed to a deficit lens. What positive asset-based phrases can we use to describe our students' strengths and potentials? Here we go. So we should be able to get some. What positive asset-based phrases can we use to describe our students' strengths and potential? Hang tight. Responses are coming in.
And then Kerry, maybe right after this, we'll go to the other one.
Okay. Yet exciting.
Yay. Multilingual.
Amazing.
Oh, I love this.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and a lot of people are
Oh.
answering in the chat. So we've got
Oh,
courageous,
okay.
willing to learn,
Okay.
and hardworking. I love all of this.
Okay, hardworking. I see,
Yes.
things that as an administrator that I do to engage MLs in the school community. We have a lot of right across the street, a Peruvian restaurant, Ecuadorian, all kinds of things around here, family language nights, cultural celebrations.
Create a welcome wagon led by other ML families to greet newcomers and their families and kind of like just provide them with like that access to community. So we are going to talk about, and this is not something that we have to answer. And please do know that they are going to share with us the questions, and then we are going to kind of send something back for them to share in terms of answering them. So how do we assume the best? Because then we're bringing it back to our first slide. So let's think about shifts that we can do.
Where do we start?
Where do we start? And then we make the small changes, and we balance being making the small changes and being responsive to our current students. We reflect on our own languaging biases and actions, and we assume the best. And you can go forward.
Yes, ma'am.
And when we empower ourselves to learn about our students and their families and themselves, we shift from seeing them as other, and it becomes us. And you can go to the next slide, and that
was the last.
Yep, you could skip that one.
We're gonna skip that one.
And then this is a Padlet that has a ton of resources for you. I could put that in the chat, and then Eva can kind of get going with
more housekeeping.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So we're going to send all of these goodies over via email too. I'll make sure to include as many of these links as I can in follow-up emails that we're going to be sending. I do know that people are short on time. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to our speakers today. This was fantastic. I loved seeing all the great ideas coming out of the chat and just people having lots of amazing things to add. You can follow these lovely folks on all of these different links here, and we'll include this as well in some follow-up messages. And then, as I mentioned before, this is sponsored by ListenWise. We have a fantastic product, LingoLift, that enables you to do a lot of the things that we mentioned today, including there's some built-in tools for translanguaging, tools. I was writing down things that I wanted to mention, visuals, all different kinds of things like that. I see people are continuing to add more questions. Please do. We will respond to you via email afterwards, but we are running short on time. And I do have a quick video I wanted to show you about ListenWise. Let's play it now. Thank you so much for joining us again. Just in case you missed it at the end of that video, we did include an announcement that we have a brand new writing assessment tool that's now active on ListenWise. You can try all of this for free today. You can just go to our website and sign up for a free trial and try that out. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, ladies, so much for a fantastic webinar.
Thank you
Oh my
so much.
goodness, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful evening,
Have a good
afternoon,
night.
everybody.
Okay.
And we'll be in touch. And reach
Yes.
out to us if you want to chat further. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.